In my discussion the other day of the chapter on the spook who sat by the door in this great new book, Revolution in 35 millimeter, sent to me by Mtume Gant, I somehow left out the best part. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What's up, world? Welcome back to I Mix What I Like. Check out this quick segment from a longer video I did the other day over on Black Liberation Media. The link is in the show description. And stick around to the end where I will have now corrected the error I made in leaving out the best part. I'll start here. I can't wait to get into more of this book, and it comes off blurry, that I got from Mtume Gant. Shout out to Mtume Gant. His book is called Revolution in 35 millimeter in glorious color, edited by Andrew Nett and Sam Dehan. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. But it's subtitled Political Violence and Resistance in Cinema from the Art House to the Grindhouse, 1960 to 1990. And it's a collection of articles, essays, with the posters in them. It's beautifully done. I'm loving the book so far. And I've only read the intro in one of the chapters so far. So I'm looking forward to getting into more of this as we go on. But one, it's just a good reminder or introduction for those of us who haven't studied this, of how much film has actually been made in the world. And film outside of dominant studios, and films that have attempted to do things that the films we get encouraged to see don't do. So that's one important thing. But I did read the chapter by Michael Gonzalez. The first chapter I skipped to, I admit, was the chapter on the spook who sat by the door, titled "Louder Than a Bomb," on the spook who sat by the door. And I gotta get Gant on here to talk more about this. But there's a couple things that if you haven't read the book or seen the film, you should. And then if you have read the book or seen the film, you should definitely get this book and read what is said about it, because it goes into some of the history. It mentions some of the film legacy that this film comes out of, films that I have not seen and films that I have, like Uptight, which I would recommend people see as well, from 1968, where you can see Max Julien as the lead. Not, I guess this is a spoiler but it's worth it to spoil it. So I'm about to spoil the film. I'll just hesitate here for a second if you want to pause and mute and come back or whatever, or skip this part if you're watching this later. But in the film Uptight, which, how do they describe it in here? Uptight was Dasson's, that is the filmmaker's, first post-blacklist production. This is someone who had been blacklisted during the purges, Hollywood purges of communists. Though the film spent considerable time with Black Panther-esque rebels who called themselves the Committee, we never see the actual uprising. Still, that didn't stop the film, which was produced by Paramount Pictures, from being labeled un-American in the fear that it might encourage violence. Even during the film's production, the FBI dug into its content and the patriotism of the cast and crew. And it's interesting to read that, because I've said for years now, you see the film and you can see Max Julien die on camera as the lead character in the film at the end of the film, who was supposed to be a revolutionary. And then you see him reemerge a year or two later as the pimp. The Mac, of course. So you see cinematically what happens and is meant to be projected to happen in real life, and then you see cinematically what happens with the politics of popular film. You play a revolutionary leading a black revolution, you're killed, and then you're reborn on screen as a pimp. But the next line of the book, in an FBI report to the then governor of California, Ronald Reagan, who, say it with me, everyone, died during my wedding. It was written that the film, quote, can be expected to further racial discord and disorders in this country, end quote. And then it says here, Years later, the same language would be used to try to discredit Spike Lee's masterwork, Do the Right Thing, but those barbs came from film critics as opposed to government agency. What I like what Gonzalez is doing there is a couple of things. One, he's showing clearly the politics of popular culture and how, from the perspective of those in power, media are meant to play a colonizing, suppressive function. So this idea that it's just entertainment, you're doing too much, is again exploded, pun intended, in this book. The other thing he's doing is that he shows that as Gonzalez, by making that point about what was attempted to be done to Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, was to show that whether it's some sort of official COINTELPRO style operation or just again the primary function of journalism and media within a colony, the journalism does the same thing that the intelligence agencies would want to do by demonizing the politics of a film that is threatening to a white affluent audience. This is why I've always been bothered when Spike Lee would come back a few years later after making the film 25th Hour. And I know it was in part to promote the film, but it bothered me that he needed to promote the film, even if that's it would be his claim as to why he was doing it, by at the time saying that this was always the film he was building his career to make. Not a horrible film, but just a film about a white dope dealer with his Latina girlfriend and his decision that they kind of leave you thinking at the end of the film he might have made to escape or turn himself in to go to prison. Not a bad film. I'm not mad at it. But to say that this is the film you were building your career to make, like this is not improving upon Do the Right Thing and all those earlier, I mean, that bothered me, but again, it speaks to the desired role and function blackness is meant to play in pop culture. That is, provide the spice that white audiences want to see. And once you upset them by going too far with the politics, racially or otherwise, no, 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 no. Now, so just go make a more or less routine gangster film. Become a black Scorsese. So I love that Gonzalez does all of that within just a couple of pages, and then he talks. And there's more in here about the how the film was made, shooting it guerrilla style, all this other kind of stuff, and it ends with a little bit of something that I remember hearing about. I hope it's died on a vine somewhere. That Lee Daniels had reportedly bought the rights to create the television series remake, and I heard at one point he was doing it in Baltimore for Netflix, and that would be a travesty because Lee Daniels, the butler and all that kind of stuff is just politically tragic. So I would hate to see, and it reminds me of the. Hey, if you haven't seen it, please check out the Saturday Night Live I did the other night. Had a lot of fun, but it reminds me of the point I was making there that when Dr. George Frazier starts his discussion at the Ron Daniels panel by referencing Kwame Ture while promoting an anti-Ture politics, that's the stuff that always bothers me. So it's people like George Frazier who don't have Tourette's politics wrapping themselves in it to project a sort of militancy they don't have. And then here comes Lee Daniels, at least threatening by my estimation to take over uh and serialize the spook who sat by the door. What would that mean? Because even in that, the film, as is discussed here, was done guerrilla style, meaning without sanction, no permits, with a certain politic that the filmmakers fought to maintain. To the idea that it would be sanctioned, well funded, and given to Lee Daniels for Netflix is not a good thing. But again, just one more quick shout out to Revolution in 35 millimeter. We'll get more into that as I continue reading it, and we get Mtume Gant on board for that. All right, so all that's well and good, but I skipped the section in my notes for some strange reason, which had me leave out what to me is the best part. So a moment ago, you heard me talking about the way that this chapter beautifully, even if inadvertently, it lays out the parallel between how the state through its intelligence agencies would work and the state would operate or receive its interests through sanctioned mainstream, often commercial media and journalism. But the chapter also shows a parallel, demonstrating again how often through Black capitalist fantasy and an attempt to evolve a Black bourgeoisie, the colonial order finds its way back again. So the chapter explains how Ivan Dixon, the director, and Sam Greenlee, the author of the book and screenplay, approached big money Black folks in Chicago, including Ebony Negro Digest publisher John H. Johnson and George E. Johnson Sr., founder of Johnson Products Company, but they refused to contribute. Instead, the duo began raising money among non-moguls who simply believed in the necessity of the project. So that was it, a relatively brief but powerful omission on my part from the initial video, and why I wanted to add that back in to make the point more clearly and plainly that in this case, it's so beautifully laid out that John H. Johnson, in his desire to sell the Negro, and you can get more on that obviously in the Buying Power book and in many other videos, but the point being that John H. Johnson, while selling the Negro and helping evolve the mythology around Black buying power in an attempt to sell the Negro as a market to white advertisers and corporations, and to teach those corporations how to sell their products to the Negro, was not interested in supporting a film that would jeopardize his attempt to promote Black people as just aspiring to a nice American middle class life full of consumption and Black capitalism, which would, of course, enrich him, that is Johnson, and his Black bourgeoisie class, again, whose interests are decidedly against revolutionary politics. So the idea that buying power, Black capitalism, Black entrepreneurialism is a revolutionary path is yet again demonstrated to be false.